This is episode number 10 with Michael Young. Welcome to the Archiologist Talks. The Archiologist is a collaborative platform that focuses on showcasing worldwide design projects from students and young professionals. This time around, though, we're creating a space to talk about design with the leading architects and designers around the world. Our goal for these conversations is to inspire and influence the young community. We're going to bring in tips, personal insights, and different perspectives of what design really is to each one of us. And I'm your host, Maria Flores. Hey guys, how is everyone doing? Welcome to the Archiologist Talks. This is yet another episode that is gonna blow your mind, seriously. And today I am just extremely hyper. I believe it is because it's 11:47 p.m. at night on a Sunday. So yeah, that happened. It's basically every architect's dream, right? That's just messed up. Just kidding. You guys should go to sleep. Seriously, go to sleep. But today I have with me a really amazing person. His name is Michael Young. He is an architect and an educator who practices in New York City, where he is the founding partner of the architecture and urban design practice called Young Ayata. He has taught in a lot of places, starting from the Cooper Union, SciArc, Princeton University, everything that you can think of. Seriously, he has been everywhere. And he's currently in Rome because he got the Rome Prize from the American Academy of Rome. I really like this episode because we talk a lot about teaching. You know, we've had a lot of successful architects that talk about their jobs, that talk about what they do in their firms and offices. But, you know, the explanations that Michael give are very related to the students and everything that he teaches and how much it impacts his life and his work. And it's just such a compelling story. In this episode, we also talk about how important it is for design schools to primarily teach design, because all the projects talk about the real world. Even if sometimes we believe that schools don't really teach us enough. I've heard that conversation going on Instagram, so that's why I kind of asked him what his thoughts were on the educational system. So it's really funny what he says. We also talk about his experience as a student and how he believes that waiting 2 to 4 years before going to graduate school is the most beneficial decision for you. He also talks about how his teaching experience has given him the ability to continue learning year after year from his students and how he applies that knowledge into his firm. We talk a little bit about when exactly he realized that he wanted to create his own studio and why it was so important for him to have a work partner whom he could trust in order to build something together. So he talks about the characteristics that he himself was looking for in a partner, right? So it's in between trust and thinking that that person is going to be beneficial for you, to have a relationship as friends, but also as a business relationship. So honestly, it's just such a cool conversation. I'm very, very happy about it, and I'm glad that I have it here for you guys. So enjoy, let the talk begin, and I'm gonna go to sleep. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for being in the podcast. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. To you as well for having me.
We were talking about the fact that you're in Rome for the next 11 months. How does that feel?
It's incredible. Uh, Fortunate enough, lucky enough to have received the Rome Prize in Architecture for this year. So I'm at the American Academy for the next 11 months working on a writing project and a drawing project.
And you're not teaching at the same time?
I'm not teaching. This is my first break from teaching in years. In
Oh, wow.
in many ways, I'm already learning from the other scholars and artists that are here. So it kind of feels like I'm back in school.
That's cool. Yeah, you're learning. I mean, it's always learning. So I want to go back to the fact that you just said that it's kind of like you're learning again as if you're a student. And I want to ask you about what it was like for you to be a student.
Okay, sure. I guess the facts of my architectural education are that I have a Bachelor in Architecture from Cal Poly
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco, 5-year degree that took me 6 years to do. And then I have an MR2 from Princeton University. And between them, 6 years of working in an office.
So wait, you did the bachelor, and then you worked for 6 years, and then you decided to get a master's.
Then I decided to get a master's. Yeah, absolutely.
What was that transition like?
Well, I always make this recommendation to students of mine who are thinking about getting a graduate degree that
Mm-hmm.
best to take some period of time in between undergraduate school and graduate school, and usually recommend somewhere between 2 to 4 years. 6 years was maybe a little bit much, but I know that at some point when I was working in the office I was working for, I realized that I wanted to teach. I realized that there were other things about the discipline of architecture that I needed in my day,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of my life, and I made the decision to go to graduate school and try to pursue some sort of path where I was half practitioner, half academic, half artist. I know that's three halves, but that's okay because they add up and flip with each other. But yeah, my experience as a student, I guess what I'd say in that combination that I just spelt out, when I came to graduate school after being in an office for a period of time, I was ready and primed to take on a different set of projects and deal with it completely different way that we don't really have as undergraduates because we're not experienced in putting a building together and dealing with the construction and everything else. So when you come back to graduate school with that kind of experience, it puts things into a different perspective and it allows you to kind of set up a different set of issues for you to explore as a student. Even though by the time I graduated, it had totally changed and now it's a completely different thing, but that's good too. To have that kind of maturity and that ability to challenge yourself, to push yourself, and then to hopefully be open enough to change.
Yeah, it's like you tackle the graduate work in a different perspective, as if you have a long time working at a firm and you already know, you have experience with the documentation, how the building is actually built, because before, we don't really have that sense of knowledge.
Very true. And it's interesting because it's not exactly that it makes you do more pragmatic indoor practical things in graduate school to have that
Mm-hmm.
experience. Often it puts things into an understanding or a relationship where the discipline includes theoretical, historical, academic aspects and the practice of building. And in that, it then allows you to kind of address long-standing conceptual questions within architecture to simply better the professional and practical side of things, but to understand where the holes, the gaps, the areas for experimentation, the explorations that you pursue that have a tie within this relationship between all aspects of the discipline.
What made you want to start teaching when you were in working professionally?
Both my parents were teachers. I was raised by educators, and that left a big impact on me. But I also realized that I spent a lot of time, a significant amount of time, reading and writing and drawing. And the experience of being able to dive into that in a daily way, not only pursue it in conversations in a setting with students,
Mm-hmm.
allows you to understand it in a totally different way. There's this piece of writing by a French philosopher named Jacques Rancière called The Ignorant Schoolmaster. And it's kind of a beautiful thing. If you don't know it, I recommend you check it out.
Yeah, I have to see it.
the way that I understand seminars, that seminars are not lecture courses where teacher or professor is somehow providing knowledge that the student consumes, and design studio is really a space for student-driven explorations in which the professor is a critic or a guide or a prompt.
Mm-hmm.
A seminar is a space where the professor is going to teach things that he or she does not actually know, and the professor is going to learn those things that he or she does not know through the discourse and conversations that one has with the students who are there.
Yeah.
It's kind of an amazing idea, because that's really what seminars do. When they're really cooking, when they're really flowing, everybody is talking things out in the process of discussing and arguing and putting positions down, positions and defending them. You think about things in ways that you could never think about by yourself, that you could never, or the attendance of lecture down situation. And I love it. And that experience I thrive on. I constantly.
That's amazing.
So the practice of Young Ayata, which is a partnership between myself and Kutan, both of us teach, both of us are educators. We've done it in numerous places now. I've taught at the Cooper Union for 15 years.
Right. Okay, so based on your office philosophy, you were talking about how interesting it is for you to mix and match the seminars, and what you learn in the seminars you apply to your office, right? Do you believe that architecture schools should be more geared towards design concepts and the abstraction of ideas, or more toward the practicality of the quote unquote real world? That's been a question that has been in and out of the Instagram for some time now, that people are worrying about where the educational system is going.
The way that I would speak to it is that I consider the academy, I consider the universities, I consider the architecture school in all of its formats to be the real world, and to be as real as any professional environment or practice-based environment that is situated outside of the academy. I don't differentiate one as more real, as less real, and it's are they different? Yeah, they're different. An architect to explore different avenues and different aspects of what it is that we do. I consider an architect anybody who's dedicated and has dived in to this question of what is the built environment, the ways in which we speculate on the possibilities that the built environment can be other than we assume it to be, is committed to pursuing those questions, and whether or not they do it in a big practice, in a small practice, by themselves, in a university setting. If you're dedicated to those ideas and you're committed to it, I consider you an architect. Now, the one thing that I would put in there that is sometimes maybe oddly missing is I do think that in the educational environment in our schools, we need to make sure that the work we're doing, the speculations we're doing, the representations we're producing, the arguments we're do deal with potentiality of buildings. Now, that does not mean a small and or narrow view of what that built environment is in terms of the practicalities of what is usually meant when people say the real world.
Right.
Zoning ordinances and all of those other things. All of those other things are important to any project to consider. But that does not mean that they must be addressed at all times and in every. So if that's a long-winded answer, it's essentially saying that the university is as real as the practice, and the crucial thing is to be able to have a project, and that is not necessarily dictated by the service economy of trying to constantly please the client. That can be taken the wrong way. Clients are crucial to any good project. Architects,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our own clients often backfires in a very odd way. Clients are crucial to what we do, but that does not mean that everything that is in service of one particular environment and success of the economy of a project is somehow more real than an abstract conceptual pursuit.
That's a good point, because I think that at least in the university that I was in a couple of years ago, the question was, is what I'm doing real architecture work when every other architect outside is, building and constructing? And, those practicalities of construction and budgeting, it was definitely not taught to the students in my university. So I think that's where it comes from, but I understand your point of view, and I totally agree with it. Talking about the fact that it is all real architecture, the design work.
And I guess also to clarify, when I say that the architectural work that's experimental and explorative and speculative,
Mm-hmm.
diversity that has to be addressed about building, it be built. I think this is important. There's a huge amount of experiments and influences that have come upon us, and I think have propelled the discipline forward, that have not actually been physically constructed as buildings in the world, yet they have everything to do with questions about building,
Right.
questions about ways in which we construct.
When you're talking about your office, and I want to know when you started your office. Like, when do you think it was time and you said, I want to build this, I want an office, I want to go ahead and work with a partner? What was going through your head at that time? When did you think it was the right time?
We started our office in 2008, about
Mm-hmm.
3 months before the economic collapse.
Okay.
So had we known there was an economic collapse 3 months away, I don't think we would have started the office then. So it was, in one way, just absurdly bad timing, and
Yeah.
it kind of forced us into a different situation. Now,
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing with that. That I think has been a blessing in the long run, is that had we started at a moment where everything was booming and we had a project that was built and it got built, and then everything started rolling and the practice built from there, even though that may have been economically better for us, I don't think we would have developed the practice that we became. Not that we're like not trying to say it in a way. I don't think we're even near what we're going to become at someday, hopefully, in our lives. But
Mm-hmm.
what happened with that economic collapse, and then also that also spurred us on to pursue more academic jobs, more teaching jobs,
Mm-hmm.
was it gave us time to reflect, to think, to experiment, to do competitions, to have self-driven arguments, writing projects, experiments with different technologies, experiments with different representational ideas, and had everything cooked into an immediate success of practicing and building. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that I had that time. And I think we would have become a very different practice. So in many ways, we were lucky that that happened. As far
What?
as how to know when,
Uh-huh.
that was part of the initial question too. That I think for me it was, I was already teaching at the time, and I was trying to do some things on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I began to realize how necessary it was for me to have somebody to bounce ideas off and to tell me I was wrong,
Yeah, that's cool.
and then likewise back and forth. And um, I knew at that point, after having 6 years of undergraduate, 6 years in a practice, and then 2 years in a master's in a graduate school, I kind of knew that I knew everything I needed to know to do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
there was no real experience that another office was going to give me that would significantly add to that.
Mm-hmm.
Bhutan and I had been in graduate school at the same time at Princeton, and then we had worked together a little bit at Reiser Umamoto, New York City, and I got along with them. We got along in terms of some shared interests and some sensibilities, and yet we also were coming at it from slightly different points of view. And I trusted them. That was necessary.
Yeah.
That kind of trust and that kind of willingness to kind of go through the struggle of things together was what started the partnership off.
Is there something that you guys disagree on?
Um, yeah, sometimes we disagree about things, and it's interesting because we each drive each other to challenge our own assumptions and our own have natural tendencies to do things certain ways. And it's interesting. It's interesting for us now both to look back over a decade of work together and see
Mm-hmm.
how much things have changed over that decade in terms of what we do and how we think about architecture and design architecture and produce it. But that there's still some threads that maybe we weren't even conscious of in terms of
Mm-hmm.
constant recurrence through the work. And it's only after a period of time and then a period of reflection that you begin to see those things. But if I did, there was one kind of difference that we would questions about, like, okay, so what do you think about this architect or that thing or this thing or that thing? By and large, we agree about a lot, but there's one that we disagree about, and that's when it comes to do you go to the side of OMA Rim Koolhaas or do you go to the side of Peter Eisenman? And I go to the side of Peter Eisenman and Kutan goes to the side of Rim Koolhaas. That's a disagreement. And I think
Yeah.
a good disagreement because there's, I think, amazing qualities within both of those architects that once you kind of mash them and let them create some kind of friction and tension together is positive.
Yeah, that's a very compelling story. I think that, most or some designers, they want to go ahead and start an office, a studio by themselves because they believe that they have what it takes. But just how you're saying, just having someone there to bounce ideas off, it's it's a very it starts to become a very interesting relationship. And I'm sure that you guys now are really good friends, and it has become a relationship where you trust each other, and it's a really amazing thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I won't answer for Kutan, but I know that I could not do this by myself. It's the partnership is just fundamental and absolutely necessary, and I can't imagine doing it with anybody right now besides Kutan. It's,
That's great. What was it like when you guys started working together, in the terms of how were you able to find clients? How did you start thinking or organizing the firm?
when we first started, we both lived on 14th Street in the East Village. I lived between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, and Kutan lived between 1st and 2nd Avenue. And
Mm-hmm.
we worked out of Kutan's living room. That was
For
our
how long?
uh, that was about, let's say, maybe 4 months. Um, and in the past 10 years, we've had three different long-term offices, of
Mm-hmm.
which we either kicked ourselves out because we had no money or got kicked out by some change in the world. And then there would always be these crossover moments in between one studio space to another studio space where we'd be again working out of apartments, working out of coffee shops, working out
Mm-hmm.
of shared workspaces, anything that would allow us to kind of bridge that gap before we have another studio space. Um, Now, I think I said this before, but I guess this is an extension of it. Because both of us teach, and both of us
Mm-hmm.
teach full time in a fairly intense manner, it does give us kind of support in a way that the firm can be a little more experimental and take risks that I know other firms don't have the luxury to take. And
Yeah.
so that has been, so when we say, okay, we can give this space up now, we move it into a storage shed, and then in a couple months we start looking for a new space, that's not a luxury that we do. Um, so we are lucky that way, even though as it gets longer and longer, we just moved into a storage space recently. Man, it's a pain, and I not want to do it again. And over time, you just collect so much stuff, so many models, and so many just the physical cruel of material that an office would be.
So in the beginning, you were kind of working on the projects that you wanted to experiment on, right? Would you get the would you, go out and look for a site yourself? Would you start up the project yourself? Did you have any clients?
I guess I'd say in the very, very beginning, we had a client that we started the office with that then evaporated during the 2008 economic crisis.
Okay.
And we had a couple small interior renovations. And I think it was also at that point too where we kind of said to ourselves, do you want to continue to pursue more of these small interior renovations, or do we want to find other ways in which to balance the economy of our family life? For us, this was through teaching that then allowed the studio to kind of really be what we wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a client for a residential project that's actually still a client. So this is a project that we're working on phase 5 of now,
Oh, that's great.
where we've continued to add, renovate, um, recreate different extensions and additions to the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a crucial client to us for many, many years. And then in other ways, we started working artists, we started working in galleries. There's a Dutch artist, Harman Brenthauer, who we several years.
Would these people come to you, or would you look for them? By networking and stuff like that.
Well, the residential project came, I think, in our second year of our practice, and it was a referral from a friend. So
Okay.
I think that a lot of first jobs actually do happen that way. They're referrals of
Yeah.
friends or
Mm-hmm.
uh, parents of the kids, friends. There's things like that that just are kind of a necessary start.
That's so interesting. I love that. That's so interesting. I have a final question. Is there any advice that you want to give to architecture students right now or graduates?
To somebody graduating directly from undergraduate school,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I would say that the way that architectural education is kind of been developing over the past 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend graduate school if you can do it. But take 2 to 4 years in between undergraduate schools. And if graduate school is not something you want to pursue, then find the ways in which you can stay involved with uh,
Academics.
the ideas that drive architecture as a discipline. Because
Mm-hmm.
these are the things really that we have to contribute.
Yeah,
We
I
don't
agree.
we don't build buildings. We speculate on the ways in which the background of reality can be other than we assume it to be. We can
Yeah.
shift those things, so we can make it uh, possible that people can see alternate possibilities, plausibilities, ways of living, ways of being. And then people can find other ways in which they can see themselves being human in the world. That's an incredible, powerful, and serious responsibility.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's a beautiful way of looking at architecture. What do you think of? a person that might be struggling with money, if they have the opportunity of going to graduate school and they don't really have the money to pay, do you think that graduate school in that case is worth it? How much it costs?
Yeah, it's a super tough question because it is outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
Uh, and uh, I have major issues with how much education across the board costs, not just graduate school, costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. Um, is it worth it? If you want to get into teaching, if you want to get into academia in that manner, then yes, it's. But it's not necessary. It's not.
Right.
You have a Bachelor of Architecture. It's not even required for licensure. Uh, so I would say at some level then it's upon you to find the ways in which you stay connected, publishing through experimenting, through finding the ways in which you see yourself in broader issues of the discipline and um, not get sort of jaded.
Mm-hmm.
How much nitty gritty practicality is required in the everyday practice of architecture?
Yeah.
It does require a lot of stuff that is not always interesting and or fun. But that's the stuff that has to be worked through. It's necessary to know it, and it's necessary.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I love talking to you. Really amazing conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for having me. And good luck with everything, and keep up the great work.
Hey guys, if you reached all the way to the end, I want to thank you for listening. I am very sorry that this episode, it was kind of cutting off in a lot of places and his voice was not really that clear. It was mainly because, the communication through Skype was a little iffy. He was in Rome and I'm here in Miami. So yeah, that's basically what Skype does to you. Just kidding, Skype is a great platform, but they're not sponsoring. But anyway, have a wonderful weekend. I wish you the best. This was episode number 10 with Michael Young. And if you're not following yet, you have to follow The Archaeologist on social media. Do so right now. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and many more. Also, you should go to our website, thearchaeologist.com. See you on the next episode, guys. Goodbye.